We were taught. You mentioned earlier about how bad the things are and have been, and all the things that have happened in the Ecuadorian prison system in relatively like in recent years, right?
Yeah.
So I found one thing that said near the end of December in 2021, the president of Ecuador decided the state of exception throughout. Declared a state of exception throughout all the prisons in the country.
In what year?
Which is like a state of 2021.
Which president was that? Correa? No.
I think it was him.
Was he still in there?
I believe so.
Okay, anyway.
I mean, I don't know how long the terms are, and I don't know where his term began.
I think he did 2 terms. I'm not sure he was still in then. But anyway.
This person, this president, I think it was that guy, if I remember correctly.
State of exception is when it was just out of control, basically, and that's when they would bring the military in.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
So he declared this state of emergency, basically, right? And a few days before he done that, a war had popped off between the Choneros and Lobos, right?
Yeah.
And it was reported that 116 men were killed in that.
Yeah, that's
another 80 was injured.
That's the one I'm on about, where my friend was beheaded.
Oh,
yeah. It was more. It was like 300 people, really, because they were putting them down the drains. Everything. There was so. Honestly, the photographs and videos I got sent from that is just horrific. Butchery, just wholesale massacre.
So that's crazy. And of course, it was not just stabbings; it was people shooting each other.
Oh yeah, there was shooting, people getting burnt alive, hand grenades going off. I mean, I'll give you a bit of backstory to this. So having tried to escape, I get transferred down to Guayaquil, and I'm thinking I'm going to get extorted, I'm going to get killed, because at the time it was the 3rd most dangerous prison in the whole of South America. It's probably now number 1.
So Guayaquil is worse than Quito.
Yeah, yes, way worse. Okay. Quito was like fairly all right. Guayaquil was the next level. It was completely gang controlled inside. Not gang influenced. Controlled. The gangs run it. The gang ran the inside of the prison. The guards didn't control it. The gangs did. So there was, at that time when I arrived there were 2 main gangs, Los Rusos and the Los Cubanos. Mm-hmm. And there were about 8,000 prisoners in the prison, 26 wings. Prison pretty much split in half between the 2 factions. So Rusos at one end, Cubanos at the other. There was like a border that you couldn't cross halfway down the prison. So the prison was like wings like this, with a long corridor down the middle. So one wing in front of the other, like that. Mm-hmm. That main corridor was like a kilometre long. The police used to ride up and down it on a motorbike. So yeah, these 2 were at war with each other. So I arrived there. Luckily for me, a friend of mine who's now dead had called ahead and got me received okay. I get received at the end of by the Cubanos. They put me in a half-decent cell with one of their main guys, one of their bosses, like a bit like the mafia. Pyramid structure. 3 brothers at the top running it. They were the Cubano brothers. And below it, they had a boss on each wing who ran the wing. Under him, he had his little underlings. Then on each wing as well, they had a boss of the drugs for each drug. So they had a boss for the coke, boss for the weed, boss for the polvo. No heroin at the time because it just brought too much trouble. And then they had a boss of the alcohol. And all of these bosses were paid tribute on what they were selling back up to the main people. And then they would pay off the guards. They pay off the director of the prison. Any new foreigners coming in, they would extort them for however much they thought they could get out of them. I mean, they had so many ways of making money in there. The cells they would sell, but once they sold the cell to you, you couldn't then resell it like in Quito. You know, if you left, it just reverted back to the gang. So they were on a mad money-making trip. Selling lots of drugs in there, a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol. Completely out of control. Well, completely out of control of the gang. Out of the guards. The real control in there was the gang. They would lay down the law. They were the discipline. You were open 24/7 on the wing. Your cell was open 24/7, 7 days a week. If you had enough, you go in your cell and lock it from the inside. So you could get up on the roof of this prison. You could go anywhere apart from across to the other end. between 9 and 5, and then you had to be back on your wing by 5 p.m. and then they'd lock you on your wing. Into this mix came the Choneros. This was back when I first arrived there. In came the Choneros. They were an up-and-coming gang at this time from Choni, near Manta. They came into the wing that I was on, and the main guy, Jose Luis Zambrano, I knew him really well. Still know his brother to this day. If you look on my Facebook, his brother, Carlos Zambrano, is on my Facebook friends list. Still in contact with him now. So I became really friendly with this lot. They were really well-known contract killers. Jose Luis, at the time of his arrest, had killed 86 people at the age of 26. By the time he left, he'd killed another 2. You get the picture. They were really serious people, but like a better class of criminal, more educated. I just got on much better with them. They were much more...
He was a fan of even numbers, huh?
Sorry?
He was a fan of even numbers.
Yeah. So as they came in, it destabilized the whole dynamics. Because at the time, like I said, there was the Russos, the Cubanos. They were happy having their little war between each other. In comes this third gang into the end of the Cubanos are running. And suddenly the Cubanos feel really threatened because they know how powerful this gang, the Choneros, are becoming. So they try and take them all out. Well, they try and kill Jota Eli. 1 October, I think it was 2009. It's in the book. And there's a big shootout on the wing. 9:30 p.m. Me and the German guy, also called Pieter, who's now dead, unfortunately, are cooking. I'm cooking spaghetti bolognese in my cell. Mm-hmm. I bought a cell again. And Gatto, who was like the right-hand man to Jota Eli, had asked me for a plate of the spaghetti bolognese. I had Carlos, Jota Eli's brother, living right in front of my cell. So we were cooking together, having a laugh every day. I'd actually started selling coke in the prison for them. So I was close with it. I was quite tight with this bunch. They trusted me. They really liked me. So the Cubanos sent in a hit squad to kill Jota Eli this particular evening. Me being me, kind of like oblivious to what's going on. Didn't really care. Wasn't really aware of what was happening. Anyway, Gatto has asked me for this plate of spaghetti, and I'm cooking it, and I see on the wing this evening that it's really quiet. Normally, everybody's cell doors were open, there was music playing, everybody's smoking, getting high, coke, drink. It's a party atmosphere every night without fail. All the doors open, loads of activity. This night, all the doors are shut. It's really weird and eerie and quiet. And I was like, and there's no music. I said to the German guy, I said, what's going on? It's really weird. You could see like hushed groups of like 2 or 3 people at different points in the wing having really like hushed conspiratorial conversations between each other. I was like, something's going on. He was like, nah, whatever. And we were like, nah, just carried on. Anyway, the Cubanos, I was friendly with all of them. And they were sat, this hit squad basically, was sat at the end of the wing, at the gate into the wing, like the main gate into the wing, talking. And Gatto's cell was in that direction. So I've walked down the wing. Here's the main gate. They're sat there. So I've said hello to them. They've seen me get this plate off him. Go back to my cell. So they've clocked that I'm about to give him food. So they've used this as an excuse to kill him. So as I come back with a plate of food, I knock on the door. He comes out, and one of them's come up from the gate behind my right shoulder, used me as cover, come up behind me, and shot from behind me, get past my head, shot him straight in the face, blown the back of his head out, dropped him then and there. Spaghetti's gone everywhere, as well as the back of his head. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Run to my cell, shut the door, gone in there, and the fucking Germans opened the cell door to see what's going on. I mean, all hell was broken loose. And he's opened the cell door to see what's going on. I've grabbed him. I thought, what the fuck are you doing? Shut the door. It's only a wooden door. It's solid. It's hardwood, but it's still only wood. There's a gap just above it where an air conditioning unit can fit. And I had an air conditioner in there, that's right. But it's easily removed from the inside of the wing, and that's how they would get you sometimes. If you didn't open the door, they'd pull that out and throw a petrol bomb in or a hand grenade. So, yeah, all hell breaks loose. Hotter Ellie comes out of his cell. Another guy called Manuko who came out with an Uzi. So there's an Uzi going off. There's handguns. Go on. What were you going to say? So there was Gatto and Hot Ellie on the one side, pretty much, and about 12 of the Cubanos on the other side, trying to kill them. So a massive gunfight started on the wing that we're locked in. Goes on for about 2.5 hours. About halfway through, Hot Ellie managed to get hold of a guy, the boss, like the newly installed boss on the wing, who was called El Negro. Mm-hmm. No, Polia. Mm-hmm. Polia, that was his name. I think it was. And the weird thing was, I'd seen him. I'd been talking to this new boss a couple of days before, and you know when people get that look in their eye when they almost feel that they're going to die. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that? You know the look I'm talking about.
1,000-yard stare.
They know their time is coming. Somehow, mm-hmm. that intuition, they know they're going to die, mm-hmm. and it's a weird look. And he had that look, and I saw it, and I've seen it a lot. And I saw it in his eyes, and I think he even said to me he was worried that he was going to end up dead, because obviously he knew this gunfight was coming. And sure enough, Hot Ellie managed to get hold of him, get him, and they got him in the exit of the wing into the exercise yard, which was the width of a prison cell. It was basically the space where a prison cell had been. They just knocked a hole into the exercise yard and had a gate on it. So you imagine the width of a prison cell and the length, 6x12 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So they managed to get him in this space. They shot him twice in the stomach, and he's begging for his life. Goes on for about half an hour, 45 minutes, crying out, saying he's got a family. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Blah, blah, blah. And they're going, oh, we're going to kill this motherfucker. Blah, blah, blah. Goes on, and he's begging, he's crying, and in the end, they just went, fucking see this. Excuse my language, but to see this cunt. And they shot him in the head and killed him. So this goes on for 2.5 hours. It was either 2 or 3 people ended up dead. Well, Gatto, him, and I think someone else. And things died down. The ammunition starts to run out. And what the police would do is they'd wait for the ammunition to die down before they came in, because it was so dangerous. Mm-hmm. So they waited, 2.5 hours goes by, things are calming down. And we start to hear the police surrounding the wing, the crackle of the walkie-talkies and all that, the CV, the radios. And they then came into the wing to find out, what had gone on. So they get everybody out of their cells. They start torturing everybody, beating us all with 2x4 bits of wood, butts of guns. Anyone with gunshot wounds, they had them straight up in a cell, discharging firearms up against the side of their heads, drowning them to find out, torturing them to find out who had done what. They eventually establish what's gone on, who's done what. They take out the choneros, give them their own wing, take them to another wing, give them their own dedicated wing to try and stop this happening again. Drag the bodies out in front of us, past us. All of this went on for another 2.5 hours. So that was almost worse, because we're all getting hit and, damaged. At the end of that, the police herded all of us, and there was about 120 people on the wing at that point, into that space where El Polia had been killed. And you imagine that half of that space was full of his blood. He was quite a big guy. And it was, half a cell width pond of his blood. He'd bled out. And they put 120 of us in that space. You imagine the space of a prison cell, 120 of us.
What?
Stuffed in there, rammed in there, beating us to get us in there. I mean, we were literally like this, stood in this guy's blood. I was in a pair of trainers. It wrecked the trainers, I remember. And then they got us all back out. And as we were coming out of there, they cat and nine tail whipped us all coming out. This is the police. As we ran out of that space, whip. And then sat us all down and said, right, we don't want this happening again. We've taken the Choneros out to another wing. The Cubanos are in charge of this half of the prison. We hope that's an end of this. And it was for a while, but then, of course, there's all these tit-for-tat killings that would go on around the prison. I mean, the murder rate in that prison was between 6 and 8 a week. There'd be, I've seen people killed every which way you can imagine now. Shot, stabbed, blown up, cut to pieces, drowned, electrocuted, poisoned. Everything. Hung. That was one of their favourite ways of killing people, is they come in, they just choke you out and string you up and make it look like a suicide.
Suicide. Yeah.
One of the funniest that I saw was the guy had been shot and stabbed, and then they hung him up and said it was a suicide.
I read that in your book. That was funny
what the
shit.
Oh, come on. I mean, obviously they paid the guards off, but it was just like, really?
There was something else I read in your book that really struck me. You said that it wasn't uncommon for a coordinated multi-prison protest to pop off, right? So you mentioned that some people would do hunger strikes, and some of the hunger strikers would have their mouths sewed closed, and some people would be like nailed to crosses, literally. Were you implying? It seemed like you were implying that these people were volunteering for these things as part of their protest.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and the other thing which was quite different to like an American prison riot or an English prison riot, when it goes off in an English or American prison, you just destroy everything. The wing, your cell, everything gets smashed.
Right.
There, you didn't want anything getting smashed because you had to pay for it all yourself. I mean, even the paint on the walls in the prison you had to pay for, So, I mean, it was like smash other people up, but not yourself.
So what did the staff do to regain control?
It would normally, because the guards weren't armed generally. The heavier the gear would carry a pistol. So normally the guards would just get the fuck out of there real quick, just in case they got killed. The prisoners would then chain the gates to the wing shut. We'd put armed people on the gate. Anyone came near it, they'd just shoot at them. Police, anyone. And then, it would just be a standoff until the police regained control or things were negotiated out. And all the police would storm it. But when the police stormed it, it got messy. You know what I mean? A lot of people would end up killed and there'd be gunfights.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it true that the guards in Guayaquil who'd been locked up in the prison, presumably for getting caught doing something illegal, they were returned back to their jobs as crooked prison guards once their stint was over?
Yeah,
so you locked up because you did some dumb shit, then they let you out
they
and let you
did
be
their
a guard
time with
again?
us, and then they get out and they be guards again. I've seen people, in fact, I've got friends who did time in there for murder who are now lawyers.
Oh, shit.
The ex-president of Ecuador came into the prison in Quito. I spent 6 months with him. He was a prick. Lucio Gutierrez. He got arrested. He fled Ecuador with like tens of millions of dollars that he looted, robbed, disappeared to Miami, lived in Miami for years. Lucio Gutierrez, look him up. Then he came back to Ecuador thinking he was safe. And when he landed, they arrested him at the airport on his jet and brought him to Quito prison and put him in the prison with us. And he was there for 6 months. And whilst he was in prison, he was going, oh yeah, because he was running for election again. He was like, yeah, I'm going to run for election again. When I get out, vote for me, get your families to vote for me. I'll reduce all the sentences. I'll make the prisons much better. Do you know what he did when he got out? He went, fuck you. I'm going to make the sentences much harder. We're going to make the prisons much stricter.
Wow.
He was just a typical politician, just told you what you wanted to hear. Complete cock.
That's it's typical sociopaths.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you wow. You've been free since August.
Speechless.
This is fucked up shit, bro. You've been free since August of 2015.
Yeah.
But you obviously, man, you experienced that. We only talked about a little bit of the shit. I'm only halfway through your 260-page book, right? I started yesterday, right? Okay. So, like I can just imagine what's ahead in terms of the details. I highly recommend that cats grab that El Infierno, man. El Infierno
Cool,
is definitely is hell. It's for real.
Yeah.
But like during the time that you witnessed, you were doing your stint, man, you witnessed and experienced a lot of traumatic events. So
Yeah.
I mean, although it's been like 8 years since you've been out, do you still feel the effects of your prison experience?
Hell yeah. As you say in America.
A little bit.
Oh, fucking hell yeah. I mean,
how you dealing? How you managing?
Joking aside, I mean, I did go through a lot of bad shit. I mean, my mum died whilst I was in there. I don't know whether you come onto that yet. I mean, that was really bad. I mean, the alcohol finally killed her off, and the stress of me. My auntie died, my cousin died. So like a good part of my family died whilst I was there. Didn't see, that was like when I left England that time. I never saw my mum from that day. That was the last time I saw her.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty hard. It's still pretty hard to deal with. I mean, loads of my friends got killed whilst I was there. Found one of my best friends hung in his cell, English guy called Steve. He'd got into debt with the gang there, and they'd given him till a certain day, and he was begging and pleading with the embassy to transfer him or get him out. He was due for release on parole, and the gang knew that he was going to be getting out, so they came that morning, and sure enough, they killed him. Did what I just said, bear hug, choked him out and hung him up in his cell. It's blatantly obvious that he'd been hung up because his head was touching the ceiling. We discovered it. We found him. His head was touching the ceiling, so there was no drop on the rope. Like when someone hangs, it has to drop, doesn't it? His head was touching the ceiling. The rope was like, not like that. All the chairs were neatly along the side of the cell. So how did he get up there? I mean, it was just blatantly obvious. All the guards were even going, he didn't do it. The worst thing was his parole papers came through 2 weeks after, and he would have been released. And the embassy tried to cover that one up. I had to explain to his two daughters when I eventually got out what had actually happened, because they were like, there's no way he'd kill himself. And I said, well, yeah, he didn't. This is actually what happened. And I had to tell them the story. And 2 years later, it happened to another guy, a Scottish guy called Ronnie. And at that point, the embassy realised that we'd been telling them the truth. And, we were getting killed in there. So obviously they have a duty of care, blah, 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 all of that. And so it was at that point that they started really freaking out and saying, look, we've got to get all of the British people out of the prisons in Ecuador. It's so dangerous. We have to get them repatriated back to Britain. So went through that process and got repatriated in 2014, I think it was, back to Wandsworth Prison in London. 3 prison officers came out to Ecuador from Wandsworth and collected me. It was a bit of an eye-opener for them, I think. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, traumatic stuff. Yeah, got really ill with TB. The prison said it was the Ministry of Health came round supposedly giving out a vaccination for TB. And I said, look, I'm from Britain. Don't need it. Don't want it. I don't know what's in that needle. I've had my vaccination for TB. Really don't want it. Or whatever is in that needle. And they said, well, look, you either have it or we're going to take your cell off you, kick you off the wing. It just turned into a massive argument. I mean, huge. So in the end, I went, fuck it, give me the injection. And you can probably hear my cough and my breathing. That I regret every day. Because they were actually injecting us with live TB, various different strains, and then testing pharmaceuticals on the prisoners to see the viability of the pharmaceuticals, as medication. Because in there, you'll get to it in the book, but they would not even give you a paracetamol for free. Just to get to see a doctor, you had to bribe a guard, so you had to pay a guard to take you to the doctor. You then had to pay the doctor to examine you. If you needed medication, you had to pay for it. You had to pay for a prescription. You then had to get a visitor to buy the medication outside in a pharmacy and bring it in. So yeah, nothing for free. I mean, literally no medication for free. And suddenly, after they did all these vaccinations for TB, suddenly people started getting ill all over the prison. Loads of different strains of TB popping up on different wings. Mine was multi-drug resistant bovine TB. I hadn't seen a cow in 6 years by that point. And suddenly I've got bovine TB and multi-drug resistant form as well. What the, people,
bovine?
Yeah, it's cows.
How the hell?
Yeah.
That's bull. That's animal shit.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
And then all these boxes and boxes of cutting-edge retroviral drugs started turning up in the clinic. And for TB, you had to have a year's treatment minimum per each person, each patient. That cost £25,000, not even dollars, pounds. And they were giving it out like Smarties. They're not going to... Do you really think they're going to do that in a prison in Ecuador? Hell no.
Wow.
And the makers... Because I started watching at this point, and the maker's mark on the boxes changed at least 4 times in the 3 years I was on meds. And I was literally at death's door for a good portion of that 3 years. And that was really bad. I didn't leave, at one point, I didn't even leave my cell for over a year. I had a shower in there. So literally, I didn't even leave to make a phone call. I didn't go outside that door for over a year. I couldn't even walk from here to that table. I would wake up choking. If I fell asleep, I'd wake up dying because my lungs were failing. I mean, it's just TB is one fucking horrible disease. I went from 80 kilos, maybe slightly more, to 49 at my lowest. No energy, no appetite, skinny as hell, but did not feel hungry. Just horrific. A lot of people died from TB.
What I mean, aside from this great book you have and the follow-up that you mentioned, what else has got your attention these days? What do you plan on doing going forth?
So I got out, wrote the book pretty quick because the book actually, like you mentioned at the beginning, the diary. When I first got arrested in Interpol, I started writing letters to my family, and I said to keep these letters because I was making them quite descriptive of what was going on around me. I said, keep these letters because I think I may well write a book one day when I get out. Not expecting to be there 10 years. Well, 9 years and something in Ecuador, which is what I was in the end. So nearly a decade. So they kept all these letters that I sent them, and I used that as a basis for the book, which was really helpful. So wrote the book. Did an episode of Banged Up Abroad. So not only did I do that series of Banged Up at Gloucester, went the full cycle and did the Banged Up Abroad in Ecuador to complement it. Loads of podcast stuff. And at the moment, got somebody working on they've written the pilot episode for a possible Netflix series. So look out for that sometime in the future, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Netflix, or I don't know, somewhere on TV, there'll hopefully be a series. It's looking pretty good.
Excellent.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So we about to shut it down. But there's one thing, there's two things I wanted to bring up because I came across in your book and it struck me. So in your book you mentioned dealing with La Reina, which is the name of the material that the Medellin produced back in the days when I was running around. Right. And what I found remarkable was that you expressed the reverence for it almost exactly like I did in my autobiography. Right. and like, there's no doubt, man, like the Queen was the best all purpose high performance blow ever, bro. Right. For real. And you said something too. You said, this was like in an interview. You said that you were able to tell what country coke came from by rubbing it between your fingers and smelling it.
Yeah, well, looking at the color, rub it, smell it. You can just you can see how much oil's in it. You can see if there's any cut. You can smell it. You can more or less see what chemicals are in there. Then, and by the color and the texture, you can pretty much roughly know which country it's from. White, yellowy. The difference.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The Bolivian's the white. Colombia's a bit more creamy. Peruvian in between.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. And this
too much experience.
About the constant, huh?
Too much experience. Too much time around.
Yeah,
cocaine.
Man, that's deep. That's deep. You talked about the constant paranoia, which I can really really relate
What,
to,
in prison?
man. Like when I retired, that was one of the main components. I just, you carry it like from the beginning once you become, aware of what it is. And I was, in a situation where I was raised in that awareness. So you're so accustomed to it that you don't really think about it. But as you get older, you mature and all that, then you start realizing how much of a burden that the paranoia is. Like a lot of people, they don't give it much thought to that part of it, right? They think that people in the road, as y'all say over there in the UK, are only concerned with like making money or going to jail or getting killed. But those are just the aspects that they're able to see or observe from being outside of the business. Yeah. And those concerns, they do stand out, right, from time to time. But the paranoia is fueled by like who might be stealing or who might be lying or who might be watching or telling. Like ultimately it becomes the overarching concern that impacts and eventually outweighs everything else. How did you manage the paranoia? Because you speak a lot about it in the book.
Yeah. What do you mean, the paranoia whilst I was in the business?
Yes.
I mean, it does become difficult not to let it run away with you completely, as I'm sure you're aware. You have to try and keep a certain degree of a level about it. But I mean, I suppose I tried to limit the factors that could play into the paranoia as much as I could. Try to maintain as much control over as many elements as possible to minimize the amount of paranoia necessary. If that makes sense. But it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a bitch, man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Pete, man. Is there anything that you want to tell people to like look out for, go check out?
Well, obviously check out the book, Helen Fiona, published by Hebrew Penguin. Look out for the prequel coming sometime. I must get on and finish it because I'm miles behind. And hopefully a Netflix series or something akin to that. And I'm hoping in the future to do a range of chocolate products because I have started an import-export company.
That's naturally.
So look out for some Ecuadorian chocolate in your stores soon.
Yes, that should go over well.
Yeah,
I think you get a good response from that.
I've had trouble getting licenses.
It's been a pleasure, brother. It has, man. Thank you for sharing your story with Vlad TV, Pete. Travel wisely, brother.
Yeah, Vlad TV rocks.
Peace.